Sawadee-ka. Good afternoon, everyone. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Welcome to our first roundtable discussion forum titled Language Learning and Teaching in the Time of Pandemic, Strategies and Tools for Remote Foreign Language Teaching and Learning. This forum brought to you by the Department of Linguistics, College of Social Science and Philosophy, UP Diliman. Before we start the forum, please welcome our department chair, Professor Jem Javier, for his opening remark. Professor Javier?
Ayan. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. At muli po ay binabati namin kayo ng happy 98th anniversary sa Department of Linguistics. Kung hindi po nalalaman ng karamihan, ang Linguistics Department po ay dating tinawag na Department of Linguistics and Oriental Languages. At hanggang sa ngayon po, tinataguyod ng ating departamento ang pag-aaral ng linguistics, ang pagdodokumento, pag-archive, at pati ang pagtataguyod ng maraming mga iba't ibang mga wika sa Pilipinas. Sa gayunman, ang pangalawang mandato po nito ay ang pagtataguyod naman ng mainam na pagtuturo ng foreign languages, specifically yung mga Asian languages. At ito ay ine-echo po ng ating grant na ibinigay sa atin ng CHED, ang CHED Center of Excellence in Foreign Languages. Sa ngayong panahon po na ito, nalilimitahan tayo ng mga hamon, iba't ibang hamon dahil na rin sa public health crisis dulot ng COVID-19. At sa mga ganito pong pagkakataon, tinatawagan po talaga tayo na magtulungan para maka-adapt dun sa sudden and radical changes na nangyayari. Particularly po sa konteksto po ng universidad, ang pagtuturo at pagkatuto po ng iba't ibang mga wika gaya ng Asian languages na inihahain po ng Departamento ng Linguistics. So ngayong hapon po, inaasahan namin na hindi lamang kami ang magbibigay sa inyo ng kaalaman, kundi matututo rin kami mula sa inyo na audience sa pamamagitan po ng mga comments sa chat, sa iba't ibang mga platform na inihanda po ng ating departamento. Bago ko po tapusin yung aking bahagi. Nais ko pong pasalamatan ngayon pa lang ang ating mga tagapagsalita, sina Ma'am Flor Palmahil, maraming salamat po. At maraming salamat kasi isang oras lang ang time difference dito sa Maynila at dyan sa Japan. Kaya hindi tayo masyadong puyat. Nais ko rin pong pasalamatan ng our very own Sir Chris Dofitas, nagtuturo ng hapon din. At si freshly minted Ph.D. holder Dr. Kyungmin. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. Nais ko rin po magpasalamat kina Dr. Poy Canilao at Professor Isko Rosario na magiging tagapagpadaloy po natin sa hapong ito. Nais ko rin pong pasalamatan sina Ma'am Ria Rafael, Ma'am Farah Cunanan, sina Professor Divine Endriga, sina Sir Vinci Santiago na mga naging punong abala para po dito sa ating Asian Languages Forum. At higit sa lahat kay Ma'am Elsie Orr na siyang talagang nag-explore nitong StreamYard at upang maging mainam po itong pagbabahagi ng kaalaman dito sa ating Asian Languages Forum. So muli po, maraming salamat. Ngayon po ay Sabado at nasa gitna po tayo ng linggo at ng holiday, pero nanonood po tayong lahat. Sana marami po tayong matutunan at daluhan din po ninyo ang iba pang mga aktibidad na may kinalaman sa Linguistics Month. Happy 98th anniversary po. Mabuhay tayong lahat.
Ma'am Poy? Ma'am Poy? Okay, so now, okay. All right, so now we will be introducing to you our discussants this afternoon. First, we have Dr. Kyungmin. She teaches Korean in the Department of Linguistics. Okay. And we also have Ms. Florinda Palma, and she's a lecturer at the Tokyo University of Foreign Studies. And Mr. Cristopher Dofitas, and he's the lecturer of Japanese at the UP Department of Linguistics. Good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Magandang hapon. Well, again, I'm Francisco Rosario Jr. and I teach Bahasa Indonesia. And as a new foreign language teacher, I want to know, okay, so this is my first question. Is it really possible to deliver lessons remotely and address all the language skills like listening, speaking, reading, and writing? Maybe you can start with Dr. Big.
I think like most of us are supposing this is not really completely new, right? Because we have been trying various methods and approaches in our respective classrooms. And when I recall my own language learning when I was maybe 10 years old, or when I was in Korea, I used to subscribe a cassette taped English language class. So we bought some cassette tapes, and then the teacher visited our house once a week to check my progress and my weaknesses. So it was kind of remote learning because I was not with my teacher for entire week, but once a week, I had my ability checked by my teacher. So now that we are in a very peculiar pandemic situation, maybe what we have to come up with is based on what we have been doing, how we can really design more relevant approaches and focus on more material designs so we can cater the needs of our students. And so to answer the question, I think we can, it's doable.
So now we'll have Ma'am Flor.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. I'm teaching Filipino here in Japan, at Tokyo University of the Philippines. And whenever I hear the the question, is it possible? So what comes to my mind, it's always, why not? No, I think nothing is impossible. If I quote The Greatest Showman, no, a man's station is only limited by his imagination. So with a lot of imagination and preparation, I think it's really possible to to teach and incorporate, to teach and nurture all the skills when it comes to language teaching. In fact, I have finished, I just finished teaching Filipino for the spring semester. And and what I'm going to be talking today would be mainly based on my experience. And just like Mambe's experience, when I was in high school, that was a long time ago, I enrolled in international correspondence school. So I wonder if anybody know about international correspondence school. They would send me modules like books, and then I would do the task. I would send them what I have finished, and then they would send me back the feedback, and then it's repeated. That's the cycle. And I got curious while preparing for this talk. I got curious if it still existed, and now it's not that kind of thing, where they use paper, but it's mainly online. And researching further, I found out that distance learning, remote learning, actually started in the 1700s. And the first students were miners, mga minero. So I think it's not something new, and anything is possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma'am Flori. Now we have Sir Chris.
Hi, good afternoon once again. To answer the question, is it possible? Yes, it's possible to, what do we call it? It's possible for you to deliver lessons remotely and address all 4 language skills. Now, so I think one of the bigger concerns is something like listening or speaking and writing. So these 3 skills are probably the ones that have the most trepidation when we try to enter into online or remote learning. Because at least with reading, you can just send your readings to your students online. Personally, for me, I have never taken an online or remote learning course. But before the circumstances that we are now in 2020, I was already thinking of ways to make my classes more remote friendly, you could say. So I was exploring ideas on how to deliver the lessons, even though we have physical classroom lessons or face-to-face lessons. I was already thinking about how to do this remotely, usually just by trial and error. So today, and there's a lot of stuff that's already been done. And usually I just try to copy that and then see if it works out or not. And here in our new era, you could say, we have to think of new ways on how to deliver the lessons, because we can't just sit here and wait. No? So there's more experimentation and more trial and error. And for those who are a bit hesitant to try it, of course, I would suggest that they dive in, especially for the teachers. A lot of teachers aren't really used to operating online or talking in front of a camera. And I hope that today we'll be able to give the teachers mostly the confidence to try out some new things and be more confident in their latent abilities, because there's really, for me, it's the quality of your teaching doesn't change. It's just how you deliver it.
Okay, so
that's
basically,
the challenge.
All right, thank you. So basically, what we get here is that remote language learning and teaching is not really a new concept or new idea, because remote language learning and teaching is, not new in the Philippines. We have friends, we have students who've been teaching English online to Chinese and Japanese, but maybe it's a new experience for most Filipino learners and teachers. And since this is a new experience for most Filipino teachers and learners, we need to think of ways to address the common issues and challenges. And so we start with your preparation. In UP, we're starting the semester on September 10. So kumusta yung mga preparations ninyo for your course packs, for your modules, no? How are you preparing for your online classes this upcoming semester? Ma'am Flori.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
So as I've said, we just finished our spring semester. So before it started, I think only about less than a month that the president announced, "Oh, we're going online, all online." So there have been a lot of discussions. How is it going to happen? And does everyone have good internet connection? Even in Japan, that's a big problem. It's not only in the Philippines. So fortunately, the university provided an online platform, so Zoom. So we used Zoom, and then all teachers for like 2 weeks we practiced almost every day. The school provided training for the teachers, and then we practiced with my department, the people in my department. Then we had practice. I practiced with my students, because I think it's also important to give the students the confidence to be able to use the tools that they will be using for the class. And yeah, and if you practice a lot and your students already also know how to manipulate and operate the tools, then the class would go smoothly. Then we have the LMS, the Moodle, but I think not all students also know how to use Moodle, and sometimes you have to think about technical problems. So I have a backup for Google. For Moodle, which is Google Drive, and I opened a Google Drive for my class. Well, for my second, third year, fourth year, it's good that we have been practicing using Google Drive for the past 2, 3 years, so they already know that. And as for communication, I thought it would be hard if we cannot communicate, promptly, immediately with my students. So I set up a Line group. So we use Line here, not a messenger, plus of course email. Um, yeah. So and I think I will be doing the same thing for the second semester. So, and I just watch and read a lot. So do a lot of research. I think that's very important.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ma'am Flori. Now we will have Sir Chris.
Okay, so since I'm part of the department, we were tasked to produce or to come up with some course packs for the courses that we will be teaching. And well, it's very difficult to do that because it's kind of like you have to prepare everything. So when we say everything, it's like the tests, the quizzes, the activities, and the flow of the lesson from the start of the course until the end of the course. So, but of course, since we've already taught these courses, the pieces are there, the content is there. It's just the arrangement of them, which is the more challenging part of it. Now, whenever I design a course or like I design how I would or think about how I would like deliver the course, I always have like a theme. No? So what are the themes that I do? What are the themes that I have when I think about making this course is first, since we're online now, we lack spontaneity. No? So we can't really do things on the fly as easily as we could when we do face-to-face. So I think about my role as a teacher in this kind of classroom. And one, the course or pretty much the course and I have to be responsive and also facilitative. Instead of more of a hands-on approach to teaching, I would be more hands-off, let the students, do their thing, just give them some tasks, clear goals for them. And one of my major things when I teach, even if it's in-person classes, is that I want them to think of Nihongo, since it's a language, that it's a part of their daily life and not just a part of their student life. So sometimes with certain subjects, we have a switch where we just think of it as part of our schooling. But when we're out there, like we go to watch a movie or we eat at a restaurant in the past, okay, not anymore. Or like we talk to friends, we are not thinking about using the knowledge that we gained from the classroom, because of course not all of it is relevant, but that's what we want them to think about. So that's kind of like how I was tackling the creation of the online course, and well, pretty much any course naman. Okay, so there are some things that we think about, like for asynchronous, which means that we're not here, not in the same, we're not doing it at the same time. So this is pretty much left up to the students. We have to like worry about their available resources. So what can students do? Do they have good internet? Do they have the equipment? Like if you're going to, if you want them to have a project like a video project, before it would be easy somewhat because maybe they could ask or borrow it from other people that they know or from their group mates or classmates. But now that they are pretty much stuck at home, not everyone has a video camera or a capture device. So you have to think about like what's the minimum possible activities that you can do. So offline or low-tech activities might be better. So stuff like using language in a conversational form, you could use like comics, or ask them to make comics or something like that. And then, of course, you have to think about their learning environment. Our students, because they are at home, there might be many distractions for them as well. And so, and they can't be just like students here, where they could stay in UP, for example. The college student would stay in the campus for a long period of time. Maybe they spend 10 hours or more in the campus. They're not just attending classes, but like walking around the hallways, hanging out with friends, or going to the library. So if you give them some tasks that are very resource intensive, which means that they have to like focus and do tons and tons of research, that might not be good for them, because in their current learning environment, they have to like help out at the house, take care of their family members or like do chores, and then maybe, of course, some other things. So you have to think of what is the function of your class in that sense. So it has to be part of their daily life. So you provide a venue for frequent consultations, like an FB group or a chat group, so that they can still feel that they can focus on their work or tasks. Now, for asynchronous, like what we're doing right now, so we're doing it at the same time here. This is more of technicalities. So one is lag. So definitely we've been experiencing lag here. And that means one, when you want to ask students questions, it'll take maybe 3 to 5 seconds longer than they would answer in a face-to-face. And that's not just because they're processing how to answer you, but because maybe because of the time lag, they heard your question a little later, and then when they give their answer, you receive the answer a little later. So you can't do like if you have a large class of like even at 10 students, and you ask them one by one for their answer, it would take a lot longer than if it were a spontaneous or a in-person class. So you have to think, what can you offload? No? So what are the things that you used to do in a synchronous setting that you can put to an asynchronous setting? Okay? And then next one, of course, we have the camera. So since we have the wonders of camera, you can like turn off your camera as a student. No, sometimes that's what they do in Zoom. And the problem is, I've seen this one. This is a lot of worries of teachers. It's like, how can you be sure that students are listening? they could have another tab or a window open. No, they're playing some video games, and so I never really considered it because, of course, I guess in college, you know, so we would say it's the responsibility of the student to pay attention to the class. If they don't pay attention, they will be the ones to suffer. But of course, I understand that in high school or even in college, we don't want to leave our students behind, no? Not just to fend for themselves. So when you want to like ascertain if they're listening or not, it's less understood. No, you just ask instead of asking, "Oh, any questions? Did you get it?" So you have to like think of ways to make to check if they were listening or not. So you ask them more pointed questions, especially those without the cameras on. So you'd ask, "Oh, Asan, so what did you think of this and this?" Hi. So you just try to target them. And then the last one I'd like to point out as a synchronous consideration is the presentation of and the confidence of the teacher. So when you do a lot of like or you stumble on your words, this impacts the learning of the students as well. They kind of like their concentration drops each for each that you say, or each time that you're just fiddling around trying to figure out what to do next. And so if they ask you a question, like for Japanese teachers, we always don't like it when the students ask, "Sensei, what's the difference between wa and ga?" Okay. So, or they ask you, like, what's the difference between onegai shimasu and kudasai or something like that? If you don't know the answer clearly, this is the perfect time for us now online where you can walk through your problem-solving methodology. So, in fact, when you're teaching, it's more of a mental model that we're trying to pass on to our students instead of like facts. So we want them to understand how us as teachers, because we're also human and how we learn, how we figure out something that we don't understand. So you can like share your screen and then go to Google and then like, when I don't know something, I type this kind of keywords to find out the answer. And then that's another way to evade the problem of lacking confidence. Now, some teachers, when they got asked questions that they don't know, they kind of freeze up. Right? So I think we should be more candid when we are in the synchronous class. And if we don't know something, or like they ask us, what does this word mean? And if you don't know, okay lang. You just, sige, let's search on Google, diba? And this is a good website that we can use. So next time, the students might not ask you anymore. They would like search that website that you gave. And that would be a nice thing. And those are some of the considerations that I have when I make the course.
All right, thank you very much, Sir Chris. Good thing you mentioned something about the learning environments, because one of the common problems among teachers and learners in the Philippines is, intermittent connection or good connection to good internet. No,
Yeah.
So that's why we, as teachers, we need to consider offline and low-tech activities like those that you mentioned. Okay, but now we would like to listen to Dr. Bay regarding her preparations for the upcoming semester.
In complete sense, and I think I'm also doing how to figure out the upcoming semester like any other teachers are doing, but in UP we have to produce a course package, right? So I'm just trying my best to produce learner's guide and then the assignment guide. And for the past few days, I have been working on those materials, I found it's quite heavy for a teacher to work, because we assume the 100% synchronous class may not be possible. So we just have to be we just have to make a contingent plan that our students can access the materials and learning tasks or activities without seeing a teacher face to face through Zoom or whatever platform they can access. But I think what we have to think here is, because learning is a social activity, and if it's a virtual learning experience, it certainly decreases the interaction, especially in language learning, because this is to communicate with people and in a target language. But in if we have lessened social activity, it's quite hard for students, and also I think it's hard for teachers. So when I'm designing some course materials for the next semester, I'm just trying my best to maximize how I can increase practice opportunities for my students, especially when I design some tasks. Because if we give some real world tasks, which students can do outside the classroom, when we were in a classroom teaching, we used to have different various tasks. But if we redesign what tasks we used to have into what's more feasible and what's more flexible in their own home or in their respective learning environment, I think that can at least help to achieve their goals within a semester. So I'm personally trying to develop some learning materials with some detailed guidelines for my students for next semester. And it's also my personal opinion that as much as possible, I'm figuring out how to do asynchronous way. And then during my class time, because we have 3 hours for each course. So during the class time, it's as it is. I will sit down in front of my laptop, or I will hold my phone, and any of my students can approach me and they can ask me questions. So at least we can have some on-site, like virtual learning experience together.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Bay. So what I got there is that it is very important, to come up with very detailed guidelines and instructions, especially for our students who do not have access to good internet connection, or who have intermittent connection at home. But before we proceed to our next question, we'd like to greet our viewers here on Facebook. Hi, and maybe you can use the comment section for your questions, or if you want to share something about your experiences not related to our discussion, and just post those, no, there's a comment section at it. All right. Okay. So let's proceed now to our next question. So what do you think, are the some of the effective tools and maybe online platforms that teachers and students can use, for online or for remote learning and teaching? Sir Chris, muna tayo ngayon.
Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you. Well, for me, any online tool that we use, I'm looking at it one through a teacher side, and then of course for teachers, like how do you give online quizzes or online tests? I think some useful websites are like Quizlet or ProProfs, and if you're thinking, but that's more of like an assessment measure, sometimes you can do like pre-tests, diba? Kaya this is also part of learning for them. Another one is, of course, going on to Reddit, although I wouldn't really recommend it, but you can use it as a starting point, for any questions that you may have. This is especially true for students. Maybe they already go to Reddit. So yeah, I think there's like a subreddit called R Japanese language or something to that effect, and like maybe around 50 or a little bit over 50% of those are really experienced learners or teachers of the Japanese language. And one of my favorite techniques is, of course, to just go on YouTube because there's a lot of content. You know? People teaching Japanese online through videos, and they post it on YouTube. Some of them are free, some of them are like short, and then you have to pay some amount of money to get to the next few lessons. And some of the more popular textbooks in Japanese language already have a lot of people have already covered them, and then they try to teach them online. Of course, the efficacy of those videos is dependent also on who does this videos. Okay, so this is not just foreign teachers teaching Japanese, but also Japanese native speakers or like Japanese teachers who teach in a Japanese language school, and then they post videos online. So those are like some of my ideas on how we can. They're effective online tools and platforms for students and teachers. Okay.
Thank you. Mambe? Yes.
I think I have one slide to show with to everyone. Like Chris introduced, I think per different languages, they have different types of apps or platforms we can access these days. And here, I just introduced a couple of materials as a learner and also as a teacher of Korean language can visit and browse and explore what are useful for your teaching and learning. So if you visit 세종학당.org, you can see in the slide right now, there are various free resources and they provide all the textbooks in PDF forms, so you can download, and if some pages or some lessons are relevant to your teaching or learning, you can just freely download and use it in your class. And also they have some flashcard or photo images or MP3 files for listening activities. They have different resources. So as you see in the slide right now, you see different icons, and then you can click and then you can download. And also, 세종학당 offers the application. So if you download this app, as you see some icons below here, you can see how to what are the practices you can try out through this application. And then there are also some validated YouTube channels such as National Institute of the Korean Language, which provides various visual materials, especially videos on Korean language and Hangul, Korean alphabet. And also, aside from the state-led organizations, you can check out some Korean broadcasting systems that made some learning materials based on the dramas or movies they have made. Aside from this one, you can also check out other ebooks for downloading, and also some textbooks which were particularly designed for grade school or high school or adult learners. And sometimes you can also find Filipino version of different textbooks. So for now, I think how we can maximize some resources from online is to use free materials that are provided by different Korean institutions. So it's also safe for teachers, and also our students can access Korea, the materials from Korea, and teachers can adapt and redesign the materials.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Bay. So you shared with us some of the available online learning materials, and maybe we can post the details, no, where we can access those materials later. But before that, Mom Flory.
Okay, thank you very much. There's so many things I want to say. I don't know where to start. I would say the first answer would be a lot. There's so many tools that you can search and use for your class. You just first you just type in any browser top 10 tools for online teaching, top 10 tools for online learning. So I think that's the first way to go. As for my classes, yes, there's so many curated materials out there already for us to just browse and try. For teachers, you can read e- edu blogs, so education blogs, and yeah, those ones are helpful. For my for the past semester, I divided the tools that I used for preparing for my class and ones I used for the actual class and for my student outputs. So for research and preparation, um, yeah, for preparing, I read a lot. So I used tools like Pocket, Mendeley, Google Scholar, and of course, students can also use this for their classes since they cannot. You cannot go to the library, so they can use Google Scholar, and they will get PDFs of journals, available journals regarding regarding their subjects. And I think you already know YouTube and podcasting. There are a lot of podcasts that you can use for your class. For my class, since there are very few there are very few materials for Filipino. I made a podcast with Ma'am Ria. So this is to introduce Filipino from the sounds, from its phonology to morphology, and right now we're still continuing in producing materials for the podcast. And yeah, podcast, I would recommend podcast because it if you do synchronous, for my class I did synchronous learn teaching. If you do synchronous teaching, the students will be exposed to the screen for a very long time, and this is very bad for the eyes. So sometimes I'd like, and after the classes, the students will do their work um, using online tools also. So sometimes you want your students not to open their eyes, but just close them to give them time to rest. So podcasts are very good for this kind of activities. It's good research material without opening your eyes. You just listen, and then yes. And for teachers, I think the notebook web clipper is very good for preparing your lesson plans. And you can, because you can clip a whole web page. You can clean the ads, take out the ads, and then copy the information from a web page. So as I've said, for Filipinos, there are very few materials out there, so I depend on web pages like Definitely Filipino, Pinoy Star, and lyrics of songs. So I copy them using a notebook web clipper, and there are many web clippers out there, so you can choose the best one for you. Uh, for if you want free photos for your classes, and you want your students to use free photos also, you can use Unsplash, pexels.com, and I love irastoya.com. So with copyright issues, these three websites are highly recommended. If you want to make a video recording of your screen to save explaining to students, you can use the free software, a PowerSoft, and you can record your own class before the class. Then you just show them to your students, or you can upload them to a Google Drive or an LMS for students to get them, to download them. So for my collaboration tools, this means a collaboration between me and my students and the students. Now, I think you're very familiar with Google Drive, Facebook, Padlet, and if you're using Zoom, you can use breakout rooms, maximize breakout rooms for in during online classes. I think my students love breakout rooms. They can be by themselves and then talk. It's the time for them to see each other because they miss each other. They, especially the first years, they have not seen each other yet in person. Well, some of them, I have not seen them in person. So through breakout rooms, they could get to know each other. Then you can also ask them to meet online and get to know each other and do their task together. Okay. Yes. So
All right.
yes, then productivity. I recommend timers. Timers for the students to so you don't have to just sit down for the rest of the day, and so you can monitor how much time you are using for each task. And for output of my students this year, I asked them, for one of my input, what do you call this? One of the tools I used to introduce a lesson to my students was virtual tours. And at the end of the course, I also asked them to do their own virtual tours, to make their own virtual tour. And I used, you can check out storyspheres.com. If you're interested in using virtual tours for your class. So you can teach language at the same time. You can showcase different places in Japan or in the Philippines if you have 360 photos. So many things to share. Yes.
Okay.
But,
So well, I think the links where you can find the links where you can access the online learning materials are posted on the comment section. So for the details, please refer to the comment section. Also, maybe it's a good time to answer some of the questions in the comment section. So maybe this one's for Sir Chris and Ma'am Flory. Any app or tools for synchronous writing for kanji? Do you have any recommendations or suggestions?
Apps or tools for kanji?
For synchronous for writing for kanji. Yes.
Synchronous. You mean to say with the teacher? It depends on
Well,
how
maybe
you
it's
would design your class. Go for
Here,
it.
if you both, I think simply you can write on your pad paper. Na? So, Sensei, look at my. Sorry. No. If it's an app, obviously Synchronous is a bit weird. No, you could say it's like a kanji practice, writing practice app, something like that, I guess. No. If you want to use something like a whiteboard, you have to have a stylus or a touch screen. So a lot of the technique, especially when you're writing kanji, is the three types of strokes. So you have to be wary of them. If your writing software cannot register the three types of strokes, which is like the stop, the lift, and then the hook, or the brush as they call it, the lift, then your practicing for kanji writing is less than 30% ideal, because that's meaningful. No? Those strokes are meaningful. So I did like do some searching, but I think there's like some Japanese kanji writing exercises designed for Japanese people. No? They have a lot of these apps to keep your mind sharp. So they're in Japanese. So I'll just look. I'll look through them, and then after this broadcast, we'll post the details of these applications, together with the the details of this video. Like on YouTube or on Facebook, we'll post the links to them. So both iOS and Android. Okay, that's as far as I know. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sir Chris. Do you want to add something, Flori? Or
Actually,
maybe,
I've not taught Japanese for a long time, and I don't have any idea about any apps. But maybe I can recommend. I think Japan Foundation have apps for teaching not only kanji but hiragana and katakana. And the website Marugoto, they have a kanji part there, I think, so you can check them out. And also, sorry, this is maybe related to the question earlier. Since my university is teaching different languages, around 27, 28 major languages, and plus minor languages, we have a lot of modules for a lot of languages. So just check out language modules, TUFS, Tokyo University of Foreign Studies. Yes, you have Japanese there. You have listening exercises, writing, conversation, and I think you also have for kanji. Okay, that's all.
all right, thank you. And a while ago, someone mentioned something about copyright issues, and we have this question from Jevi Cruel. So, how do we address copyright issues, especially for foreign materials not available for purchase in the local market? I mean, this is even professors in the university preparing for their course packs, have the same question. So, meron ba kayong may ipapayo, may suggest dito sa issue na ito?
Marang masalimuot. Tanong. How do we address that?
Well, first of all, you could look to see if they have any kind of what do you call it, Creative Commons license, or like fair use policies in their textbooks or these books. If you're not sure, maybe you could look at their website. They might have that information there. And if you're really, really scared, now you can just send them an email and ask if what their fair use policy is. And I think they'll kindly inform you what's okay, what's not okay for you to do. Obviously, this is about the law, so this is not legal advice. And you can't just take legal advice from online forums, because that's very anecdotal. So just look at the websites. Some of these publishers have their fair use policies on their websites. If you have like a copy of one of their books, then you could also search that book for details, as you might find clues. Okay, like when I say copy of books, like same publisher but legally purchased copy of the book. Okay, and you want to use some kind of you want to use a copy of it or like parts of it, diba? So you just have to like make sure again how they view fair use.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Chris. I don't know if you want to add something more, Ma'am Flori or Ma'am Be?
If you are into checking out Korean materials, I think you can try to approach them and send email and ask if you can use for educational purpose, not really reproduce the books for commercial purpose. Then I think many educators will allow you or give some suggestions, because you can't really give legal advice here, but as I showed you some examples in my slides earlier, there are quite a lot of free materials you can access and you can just download. So try to find what are free first, and then you can visit certain schools or institutions and then send email, because sometimes their own website have a pool of resources that you just log in and become a member and you can download. So try to be I think all of us should be really very resourceful in preparation of this coming semester.
I agree. Same, Dito. Yeah, Dito. I think for Japanese major books like Minna no Nihongo, Marugoto, and Genki, they all have their websites. So you can email and they have free materials for download. Unfortunately, for Filipino, I only know University of Hawaii. They have online their lessons are uploaded online. So yes, you can write them an email or yeah, some are free for downloading. That's all.
All right, so thank you very much. I just want to share this since it's still related to copyright issues. So I got this a while ago. So the National Book Development Board of the Philippines will be having this webinar series on copyright and fair use in the development of learning materials or resources and other reference materials for both public and private schools. So so we have attorney Jeremy John Bayara. So at least we will be having legal advice from one of the lawyers now, from the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines. So a webinar series to be organized by the National Book Development Board of the Philippines on August 27 from 1 to 3 p.m. Anyway, so nag-promote na rin ang event ng ibang institution. Anyway.
Okay. There's another one pala pahabol. Yung IPO, no, Intellectual Property Office, I think. You could also ask them for advice because it's intellectual property. So they might know a lot more.
Yes, thank you. Isa yan sa mga common issues talaga natin sa preparation ng mga materials, right?
Yeah.
Hindi lang actually sa foreign languages, but even sa mga major courses na ituturo natin. Okay. So ngayon naman, pumunta tayo doon sa, I think, sa mga common questions ng mga followers natin, tas mga viewers natin, has something to do with the teaching strategies and learning activities. No? So how do we make our classes more engaging for our students? Okay. Especially, no, marami sa mga teachers ang first time siguro na magturo online or gawin yung classes nila remotely. So, meron bang iba't ibang paraan para masiguro na interactive yung classes? Okay, Ma'am Flory? Okay.
Okay. Sige. For my class, I just follow discussion, interaction, and presentation. No, before a certain class, I usually post a question for my students for like a forum that they can prepare. So they can prepare for the actual discussion in class. And I know for synchronous classes, there's going to be a lag, just like what Sir Chris have mentioned. But I think it's still very important to ask the students directly during class and hear them out. And even if you cannot see them, you just think and trust them. Oh, they're listening and they're even if they're doing something, they're still listening to you. So you just try to ask them directly some questions and give it's not only class discussion. Give them time to discuss with their friends also. So group discussions are something that my students looked forward to, I think. So that's why I said I maximize the use of breakout rooms. And interaction, yeah, discussion is a kind of interaction. And I think every time you start a class, it's very important to ask them how they are. And every now and then you take a break, you ask them again if they're tired, or they're still if they're sleepy, or what do you call this, they're already hungry. It's the same with the actual class, I think. And presentation. I love asking my students to do some tasks together with their friends, and then give them time to present anything. Give them time to present according to the theme of the class. Giving your students the voice help to them gain confidence. At the same time, it makes them active, and makes them want to participate more. um, yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Lori. Okay, Dr. Bay.
Engage more students. How to engage more students, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So I just thought of some different ideas from Flory and Chris. I mean, we can give some different ideas, three of us, because when I was trying to prepare for the course packages for the next semester, I thought what I really have to remember as a teacher, and what I can really do my best as I recall myself as a student, because I think this is time to highlight how our learners, how our students can really learn by themselves, and how they can really strategize their own learning in their environment. So we always talk about critical thinking skills, and how students should be creative in learning different subjects. But I think in a classroom setting, since we meet everyone all at once, and individualized learning is not always easy. So perhaps this is time we can challenge what was idea in the classroom, but in individualized setting, and we can give them some more time and some more flexible ways to hone, to foster their autonomy, so that they can also foster their ownership in learning different foreign languages, and eventually they can monitor their own progresses and their goal. And maybe that's the way we can try out in the new environment, not just spoon feeding, because I
Yes.
think it's also a role of our students now, that they also have a very important role in learning and teaching.
Okay, just a follow-up question, Dr. Bay. Okay, so how do you ensure optimal participation of students given the common technical problems that we have in the Philippines, like poor internet
Um,
connection?
I think that's why personally I go for as much as possible without synchronous sessions, because I understand the technical difficulties, which I also have in my house. It's not always very stable to connect internet. So as much as possible, we have to really design different tasks, and then this is where I also try to think of the 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 processes, because if students only focus on the outcome, or they just focus on one final assessment, perhaps they can be successful, they can get higher grade, or they can have some self-achievement. But since this environment challenges us how we can also monitor the progress of our students, I think it's really the long-term goal that we have to teach our students. They have to be aware this is not just one-shot education, or this is not just for them to get uno, but this is how they can really develop the skills that they can also utilize in different subjects that they learned in a foreign language classroom, but they also can use it for their life skills or their lifelong learning outside the classroom or outside the school when they graduate. So I think at first it might be vague if we just read some theories on paper, but when we design our syllabus or materials, as much as possible, we have to be very realistic. That's why I think it's important to identify what kind of situation our students are. And our syllabus should be giving some options to be flexible. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, one last question to Dr. Bay. Well, considering the learning environment and the condition of our students, do you make necessary adjustment when it comes to the target learning competencies?
Um, so just to share my personal practices, I personally don't really give a fixed or rigid grading system, because it really depends on students, because they might be slow or they might be different from others, but at the end of the class or at the end of the semester they might excel or they might show their capability which they were not able to show at the beginning of the semester. So I usually give them the whole semester to show how much they can really showcase what they have learned, because we usually in traditional classroom we have midterm and final term exams, and then some assignments, and then some skits or presentations or oral practices. But if they are excellent in speaking but they're very bad at listening, for instance, we have to give them some room and some time to balance their learning. So this is where teachers should really butt in and to guide them. What are really their weaknesses and what are their strengths, so they can really balance, because sometimes I think students are still quite naive when it comes to learning. So we have to be very clear and we have to be very specific to point out what their weaknesses, so they can realize what they have to work on further throughout the semester. So usually maybe later when we talk about assessment, I try to give some different ways they can compensate their weaknesses.
Wow.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bay. Now we'll talk to Sir Chris. Regarding the different strategies to make our classes more interactive and more engaging for our students.
Okay, so when I read this, when I heard of this question, the first thing that came to mind was to make a class engaging, you have to be engaging as a
Correct.
person. No, so if you're not engaging as a person, then there are no strategies or
I
techniques that
agree.
will help you be more engaging. So you have to be engaging first. So how to make yourself then more engaging? Because it's not talent, no? So it's not some blessing that we got. It's something that we can develop and cultivate. No, I think as all teachers, we also believe in growth mindset. So that's, as people, as teachers, we also can grow as teachers. If you're not really that engaging, if you think as you think, then you can improve. And I think about this in the way that was delivered by a tactician, Sun Tzu. People know him, and he says that if you know yourself but not your enemy, then you will lose as many battles as you win. Diba? If you know yourself and know your enemy, you will win every battle. But if you don't know yourself and you do not know your enemy, then you will lose every battle. So basically, many teachers, of course, know themselves
Part of
and what they can do. But the other side of that is their students. How much do you know about them? And at the start of the semester, we always ask them, what are your interests? What are your hobbies? But do we ever incorporate that in our classrooms? Right? And for me, in my case, I do. I think I shared like a picture here to illustrate something like that. First is I have some principles. And I always think about we have to learn more about our students. And this isn't just their names, and this is really more of their hobbies, what they like, what they dislike. And this is like one person per student. And if you're saying, oh, if I have 50 students, that's really the burden of the teacher. That's where most of our work will come from, learning about them, because the delivery of the class will be very easy once you know how to approach each and every one. And this is also like the greatest weakness. Sorry. Magsasabi ako ng this is also the greatest weakness of the current like education system, diba? Where we're like factory workers and students are like product, and they're sent into rooms and they have 1 hour 30 minutes to study something and then change rooms, and then they have like tests and whatever assessments. Now, so it's all very formulaic and all we all expect them to be like cookie cutters, cookie cutter students, and for some level, of course, what we call the floor of the skill floor, that's good. But those who are really good at something might not be able to express what they're good at. And so because they can't find something to latch onto in your class, they become less engaged. That's why we need to learn more about them. Diba? And then, of course, the second part is learning about yourself. I like anime, ganon, no? Or I like manga. I like I like idol groups or something like that. And then you have to identify what makes the subject very interesting for you personally, right? And then if you know what they're very interested in, the students, and then you know what you're very interested in, then you can like see your start and end points, and then you have to try to connect those two things. So as an example, I do have like a picture that I sent. So to illustrate this one is that my students love memes, not because they're young. So, so this is a meme. Then this is a student submitted meme. I did not submit this to them. And this was March 17. So this was after the quarantine was announced in Metro Manila. And we have a Facebook group, and my students were still posting in our Facebook group. And this is what they had, no? Katakana go. And load, and lord are all transcribed as lodo in katakana. And you know how funny it is. So this is how they connect with it. And I didn't tell them to share this. No, I didn't tell them to look for stuff like this. They just found something interesting and they shared it with their classmates. And to me, now I also found it very, very interesting. So that's very important to increase the engagement in class by doing such things. Another thing that I'd like to do is because I really like Japanese songs, like pop music, rock. And when we have practices for hiragana or katakana writing, in the physical classroom, I would give them an assignment or homework that they transcribe their favorite Japanese song into hiragana and katakana. So I mean, like, you know, the lyrics. So they would be wondering, how do they get the lyrics? That's up to them. There are many, many sites for that. And it's a really good way for them to really get engaged, because now they like this song. For example, they like an anime song. And then before they would be singing along to it, but they would be reading it in alphabet, no, romaji as we call it. But now they get to write it in hiragana, and then they get to read it in hiragana, and then later on they can, like, I ask them to like sing it in hiragana. That's in class, and we would do that. And that would be very interesting because now we learn more about our students. What kind of music do they like? And then we share that with everyone. So everyone starts to care about their classmates as well. And a student of mine sent me an email yesterday. She said that she really liked our class. And even though she didn't really know all of her classmates, she still felt really connected because we were engaging with each other every time we had class in the physical. They would be reporting, they would be sharing jokes, memes, and everything like that. And then we also have trials. No? So what's the biggest or hardest trial for a beginner is to read hiragana. And if there's time pressure, it's going to be harder. So what we do is we go on YouTube and then we sing karaoke versions of their songs. No? So it has the lyrics below, and then they have to catch up with the lyrics. Okay, so some of those are really fun, and some of those are like nursery rhymes. So that's easy, but everyone has a good time with that. They're all laughing, and then eventually, after like 3 or 4 rounds of that song, they get to know it, and then eventually they feel that they have grown. So that again, you give them that engagement. Okay. But of course, with the online classes, maybe doing karaoke on YouTube might be a bit more chaotic because of the lag issue. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. Sometimes a little that kind of failure, no, I wouldn't call it a failure, but that kind of happening, as they say in Japanese, no, that kind of event makes the class more memorable. Okay.
Episode.
We have okay, so
Happening.
sabi na isa nating nanonood sa atin, the burden of the teacher rests on learning about his students, as according to Camilo Nogoy. So it's really important to know more your students, their interest, and of course learn more about yourself and integrate this in the classroom.
From my perspective, they have some interest in Nihongo, right? And then I have very much a lot of interest in Nihongo relating to Japanese. So what I do is I try to reel them in. So that's the idea. And you're trying to hook them into the same stuff that you like. That's the same thing with our friends when we're making friends, getting to know other people. We try to probe, what do they like? Is it the same as me? And if it's not, then can I kind of twist it a little bit so that it's connected? And then the students, once they step into this world of Nihongo, then they're in my world in a sense. And then now we're talking. But now I don't even have to do as much. I don't have to, what do you call it? You don't have to control every little thing. You don't have to micromanage because they are doing it out of their own hearts, out of their own interests. Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
Okay. So one of our followers on Facebook sent this question, something to do with motivating younger learners. I know siguro it's not really our issue because we teach foreign language to university students.
Yeah.
But I think we also conducted extramural classes for kids and teens. So for those who have experience doing extramural classes for kids and teens, what would you suggest in order to motivate younger learners? Mom Flori, or I don't know, Mom Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was one of the first teachers to teach the summer kids for Nihongo.
Yes.
Yeah, for the extramurals, and and one of them now is here in University of Tokyo. The daughter of Dr. Zozimoli. So Bailey is here. And yes, how do we motivate younger learners? I would like to quote Chris also, to get something from Chris. Making the students talk about first talking about what you like, and then making the students talk about what they like. So I think giving the students, giving the students a voice, and letting them talk about themselves. I think this is already big. I think we all love to talk about ourselves. So kids love to show off. This is what I have. This is what I like. And it's more like interacting with them and communicating with them. It's not just grammar, or I don't know. Not more about grammar. It's about communicating and talking about your interests. So yes, getting to know your students is and letting them talk about themselves. It's one way. It's one way for me.
Thank you, Bob Lori. Sir Chris, nagturo ka na ba ng extramural classes for kids and teens?
I covered once for another teacher of ours, si Jonah Sensei. I covered 2 times. I just basically followed what they were saying, and it's the same. Flori Sensei already said this one. They really do enjoy talking about themselves and showing off certain things, right? That's why it's very important to know what they do like, and then you can also incorporate those into your lessons. No? So if they like some anime, then you look for that kind of anime and then you put it on your presentation. That's a very basic idea of how to maintain that motivation. And then on the online version of this thing, I think instead of like purely talking, like what we're doing, you also have to have the visuals. Because if you're just talking, then it could be like a podcast. You can do something else while listening to it. And then when you're doing that, they might miss out on some important information, right? So that's why when you have a class, it doesn't really matter which age of learner, but probably more for the younger learners. Younger, I guess pre-college people. So that would be, you have to show them stuff. Diba? Okay, so if you're gonna discuss grammar, then you have to show them a picture, and take a look at this. What do you think about this? What do you think these 2 people are talking about? No? So we just learned some new grammar 2 minutes ago. So let's try to create a conversation with these 2 characters. So something like that would be very interesting. And then another one is, again, reintegrating their likes. So if they, again, like, I had a student, although not pre-college, I had a student who really liked that K-pop band. I forgot which one was that. The biggest one. I forget who they are. But I don't know who was it. Who was it, Miss Bear? Who's the? Yes, BTS. Yeah, I forget. So, we have some activities describing people, their height, their clothes that they're wearing. So I just put a picture of the BTS thing on the screen, and then she was very, very engaged, and she was she was telling all of us, all of the classmates, who this person is, and they were like, "Oh, who's that person in the picture?" Then she would describe that person. So yeah, just get something like that, and then don't worry about how to deliver the lesson first. First worry about what's going to get them interested in it. Diba? What are they interested in? Get that thing, and then try to incorporate your lesson into that thing that they're interested in. Okay, that's what I can say for now.
All right. And one of our followers, Adrian Hieronimo, said that she would always include the words for what she saw on their T-shirts and in their rooms in her classes. And also, total physical response is also very useful for younger learners. Sabi ng isa nating viewer. Okay, Ma'am Bay, do you want to add something regarding this issue on motivating younger learners?
I think there's nothing else to add, Chris and Flo, but maybe the pace should be slower, and maybe it's more culture oriented, because when I also taught the Korean for kids and teens, they were really absorbing the lessons so fast, surprising me. So if I wanted, I think I could have finished the same textbook as we used in UP. But considering they are still learning a bit slower and more in coming years, since they were only 12, 13, or 14 years old, I think what's more important is to motivate them really uh, to teach about culture, because when they are immersed in a target culture, language really follows, like Chris explained about his student in his class.
Thank you, Bambe. Since you mentioned something about culture and immersion. Now, in learning a language, cultural exposure is crucial. So, how will this be addressed in online classes? Bambe?
um, it's really difficult because it's not face-to-face class, and we really have to give our students some imaginary ideas about Korea, Japan, or China, or in other countries when they learn the language. And this is why when we give them some curated materials, perhaps we have to be very meticulous in giving them in a lesson. For instance, when we have a couple of dialogues in each lesson in Korean classes, the dialogue is not really just about the language itself, but it shows how to deliver the language and how you can interact with Korean people, and what customs or what etiquette you have to follow. So these things you can explain verbally in pre-recorded podcast or audio recorded PowerPoint slides or synchronous classes, and then the real world task should entail how students can practice what they learned in the textbook. Or sometimes they can also visit some video materials, especially in YouTube, or if they're into Korean dramas or Korean movies, they can find out what culture elements or what culture practices they can associate with what they have watched in the media. So when they come back or when they have questions to a teacher, we can discuss aside from grammars or vocabulary we learn in the textbook. So it may not be easy to incorporate culture, but we have to really merge into language, culture, and some extra information to our students, I think.
Thank you. How about you, Mount Flor?
I think we need a separate round table discussion for this. Okay. My reply might be a bit long. For me, I believe that language and culture are inseparable. You cannot teach a word, one expression, just as it is. So I think language should be taught in context. That's why we have language in context. Like for example, if you teach about itadakimasu, you just don't ask, well, so what does itadakimasu mean? Itadakimasu mean like this, like this. So you have to ask questions, the hows and the whys, and when do Japanese people use itadakimasu? Do we have the same thing in the Philippines? So it's not, according to my friend, I'm gonna quote my friend. He said it's not only you don't teach culture, you show culture. You introduce one concept, one idea, and then you try to ask and the students what they think about it. You make them compare the differences, at the same time the similarities. There's some I learned that there is this model, the cultural iceberg model. So it also reflects the idiom, the tip of the iceberg. Usually we only just see the tip of the iceberg, right? And this tip of the iceberg is what what we usually teach, like show them a picture, the big culture, Japan has sakura and Mount Fuji, or Philippines have mangoes and bananas, but the iceberg below it is really big. So it and for culture, we need to discuss the core, why a certain concept, why a certain thing is there. Just to give a demonstration, a demonstration example, you can get anything, authentic material around you. And for now, I would like to use the mask. No mask. So for Japan, this has been part of their culture for a long time, even pre-pandemic, and it's becoming a part of the culture of the Philippines and the whole world. So, but I think we have different ideas. Every person has a different idea why they use a mask. So if I ask you, for example, a certain Sorry, Scott. What's the purpose of a mask for you? Why do you use a mask?
For protection.
Protection. Who do you protect?
Yeah, I'm protecting myself.
Mm.
I mean, and of course, you have to protect other people as well.
How do you protect other people?
Because when you're sick, you have to, of course, filter your whatsoever there.
Yeah. So, do you think your purpose for wearing a mask is the same for the purpose for why Japanese people wear a mask?
I am not sure.
You're not sure. Yes, of course, you're not sure about that. So it's like you ask a student, you just get one thing, then you ask a student about them, let them notice the differences and the similarities. For Japanese people, mask, katakana, it's a borrowed word. What do you call this? Mainly, a lot of people would say that they use the mask to protect others. It's not protect themselves. No, they always use a mask because because they have the sickness and they don't want to spread it to others. So even in the pandemic era, now, they wear a mask because they would assume that they might have the sickness and they don't want to spread it to others. And I think this is rooted I might be wrong, no, please ask the Japanology experts. This is rooted from the word meiwaku. Meiwaku is abala. They don't want to be meiwaku to other people. So they always think about, when they do something, they always think about, what will be the effect of this to other people? Will I be, what do you call this, a nuisance to other people? Will I hurt other people? So something like that. So just by using one thing, you can talk about other stuff. And I think culture is like that. Culture doesn't have to be going to other places, etc. But of course, showing photos, showing videos, immersing students in this kind of things are also very important. But since because of the limitations, we have to be creative with how we present a concept, a cultural concept. And lastly, if you would like to try take advantage of online, what do you call this? Our situation now, we can actually connect with other countries so easily because of the internet. So I have a project with my Malaysian friend. He's teaching Nihongo in Malaysia, so they invite me and my students to interact with them. So their students interview my Japanese students, and we have exchange ideas. And I also invited I also ask my students to interview different Filipinos from all over the world so they can have an idea that Filipinos are not only OFWs. Okay, so not all Filipinos not go abroad or live abroad because they are OFWs, or not all Filipinos would like to work abroad. So because we were talking about OFWs, so yeah, and if you would like to interact with my students, yeah, contact me and we can have an exchange. You can visit our class and we can visit your classes. Promote. Yun lang po. Thank you.
Thank you. What about you, Sir Chris?
Okay.
How do we teach
Yeah,
culture in
culture,
our
right?
classes?
So one of the
Yeah.
things that I thought about is like how do we encourage people to use Nihongo more in class? And I realized that it was and how I learned to speak Nihongo more
Mhm.
was I was in Japan. I studied Nihongo in UP for 3 straight years, but even then, I still couldn't really speak a lot, or maybe like continuously, or fluently. When I got to Japan, then I could. I was like kind of forced into it, and so it's like, how can we replicate that in our classrooms? Well,
Mm.
you can't perfectly, but there is one way to kind of make it something like it, and it's to create this community. Your students in UP, we have like around 20, 25 students. Um, After the class, who are they going to talk to? Their classmates or friends that don't speak Japanese, probably, as well. So if you have a community, this is the place where they can talk to people also learning the language, and that would be their classmates. And where can they talk with their classmates? With by not well, we only have like 1 hour 30 minutes in a day, for our Nihongo. So you make a group. No, I made mine as a Facebook group, and so that's where we talk about these things, and then my students share their memes or whatever. And when you're in the community, you're not just like receiving stuff, diba? You have to have a role in that community. So this is what I give my students. I made
Mm.
it. I made it a requirement in UP. No? So it's just for completion. It's not really graded, but it's a completion requirement that they have to like share a word of the day in Japanese or a favorite quote. No? So they might have favorite quotes. Here you can see in the picture in the screen right now. This is the word of the day, quote of the day, and then we have like a Humans of Nihongo. I was inspired by the Humans of New York Facebook page where they interview a New Yorker. So I was just saying, like, why don't we just interview a Nihongo learner? So you interview that person, and we have a lot of these weird things. And what you're seeing here, N1 wa, N2 des, this is actually a recap of our lesson for this meeting. So I also assign one student per meeting to create the class recap. And this is the whole thing. This is my student who made this. Okay, he or she posted this. Yeah, he or she posted this like a day after the class. So this is like, I didn't give them any template. I just asked them to like recap the thing. Some of them just posted text on Facebook, which is also great. Some of them took some pictures. Some of them created this wonderful thing, and that's also how they can express themselves. This also allows me to check if the recap person was able to like understand it as well. And what's really nice is that I have students who are absent from time to time because that's how it is. And they don't really have a problem catching up with class because there's the recap. And then they don't have a question if there's they cannot feign ignorance when they say, oh, I didn't know there was a quiz today, because that's also posted on the recap. So everyone has a role in this community. And I really enjoy this because now my students are using Nihongo. They're searching for kanji everywhere in their room, in their beauty products, and then they're sharing it with everyone. And that way they are kind of immersed in the culture. And I also have another one where we share shocking revelations. No? The more that we learn about the language, and about Japan. There are things that we thought we didn't we knew, but now we realize what they are. So some of these are my students look for trivia about Japan. Like, did you know that there's a hot spring, right, in Japan? But there's actually what they call a hot spring theme park in Japan. So it's there's one hot spring that's wine. It has wine mixed into it. Another one has coffee mixed into it. No, stuff like that. I didn't know about that. But my students searched for that and they shared it with everyone. And then, now we're all the wiser. So all of these things, because you allow them to share, because you give them a role in your community, they will look for ways to bolster or make your community better by themselves without you really prompting them. They just know what they can do, and then they will do something, sometimes magical and beyond my expectations.
All right, so some important points. We have cultural iceberg paradigm and creating a community where students can share their experiences or even new learnings about the culture and the language, or about the culture and the language. Yes, okay, so let's proceed now to our next question. With so many available learning resources online, how would you know which are good learning materials? I think this is very useful, especially for those who are doing independent study or self-study. Okay, so maybe you can start with Ma'am Flori.
Oh, very difficult question. No. How do I go about this? Yeah, I think it's just you have to search and try and then apply what works for you. Okay, so I think I've mentioned earlier that there are a lot of curated materials out there already. So what I do is I just search top 10 online learning materials or top 10 online teaching materials. So I search and then I investigate, I try each one of them, and then I apply which is best for me. So I think the situation is very different for each one of us. So you have to choose which one is good for you and be sure to apply. Because it's just like choosing a regimen or for losing weight or exercise. There are many ways to lose weight, but which one is the best? Okay. Yes, just to add something about the culture earlier, if there are teachers or students who would like to learn more about the culture, especially the teachers, if you want to, if you want materials and lesson plans on how to incorporate culture into your class, I recommend Click Nippon. So this is something I would recommend as something that would be good for teachers and students. Click Nippon by the Japan Forum. That's all.
Sorry, Ma'am Be. Yes. Any recommended learning materials for independent or self-study?
I think we introduced some different materials for earlier question, and I think whether which is good or which is bad is quite subjective because it depends how suitable the material is for your learning needs and learning goals. But I always tell my students, and also when I meet other Korean language teachers in the Philippines, I personally tell them as much as possible, try to see some validated materials first, because if you visit, if you check out Google or YouTube, there are thousands and millions of Korean tutorial videos, but how can you really rely on any particular tutorial video? Because some are designed by native Koreans, and then some others are designed by non-native Filipinos or other non-Korean speakers. And most of them must be good, but if you pick up some incorrect or knowledge from the video, you may depend on what you have started learning from that platform. So as much as possible, try to visit some validated or some recognized institutions first, and then maybe you can verify which is good, which is bad, and which helps me and which is not really good for me, because some of them would work better with some visual materials, and then some of them would prefer podcast, and some of them would go for some application where they can really meet some random Koreans for conversation practices. So maybe as a student you have to explore first, but you can always ask your teachers or your school or university, so they can suggest some trustworthy websites or platforms, I think.
Okay, thank you. So again, the idea of a good or bad learning material is relative. So it depends really on your learning goals and needs. So it's better to ask your teacher or the institution. Right, Sir Chris, do you want to add something?
They mentioned pretty much everything I would also like to say. And also at the top of our roundtable discussion, I did mention not to rely on Reddit or crowdsourced sites too much. So because it's a mix of like learners and their different levels, and then when you have a question there, and then they would answer, many of them would give their impressions instead of, let's say, something that's very concrete. Yeah? So you'd end up maybe more confused, right? So this is some of my advice for students. If you want to know what's a good site or online, first, don't rely on Reddit or crowdsourced sites. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not really reliable, but don't just stop there. Okay, and then of course, as Flori Sensei also said, trial. No, so trial and error. You go through it and then you try to apply it, see if it works for you or not. Now, their explanation, does it make any sense? And then, of course, if you're not really sure yet, then you consult your teacher. Maybe your teacher doesn't know about this website. Maybe your teacher doesn't know about these apps or whatever that you have found on the Google App Store or wherever, right? Google Play Store or the App Store. So you show this to your teacher, and then your teacher, since your teacher has more experience and can discern whether it's reliable or not, then they could tell you that it's okay. Or your teacher will tell you, let me check. Okay, I'll check that website that you just shared with me, and then I'll get back to you on that. So I learned a lot of new apps from my students, and I kind of like take a look at the apps and see if they're effective or not, or good or not. And that's a really good cycle there for students, because at least they're still actively looking for what they want. Yeah. They're looking for solutions. And I do have like some suggestions. Japanese Pod 101 they have a lot of free stuff and it's pretty good. There's also Taekim's Guide to Learning Japanese. He started out like very, very early on, and it was just a website where he put his stuff in, like what he learned about Japanese, and then now pretty much he has a book published. So his guide is pretty comprehensive, but of course that is always just a starting point. So for teachers now, unavoidably, the teachers, if your skill is really high, then you can easily tell which ones are dependable sites or not. No, if you read how they explain certain tricky concepts, then, or like if they give good sample sentences, then you can discern quickly. But yeah, all teachers, we also have to keep improving our proficiency, and then it's still the same, the trial and error. I also keep looking at new sites and seeing if they work. And we'll send up some other websites for teachers and students as well, kind of like the basics, like some basic references for both teachers and students. Now they're separate because for teachers it's more technical, and it's really if you're a student you will probably not get much from it yet. So these are two separate things, but definitely trial and error is very important, and then consultation. If you're a teacher, then of course you consult with your peers. So they can help you a lot. Okay.
Okay, so we have this question now from Joshua Tomanggil of Tuguegarao City West High School. What possible online and offline learning activities would you recommend to students to improve their language skills, like listening, speaking, reading, and writing? Maybe we'll start with Mambe.
Maybe I can show my slides for this question. So I will show you what my students have done last semester. Yeah, so last semester we abruptly had to stop the semester in the middle of the semester, right? Especially in local schools in Metro Manila and other metropolis. So when we had to stop, I still ask my students, it's voluntary. They are not required to do too much work. While I provided them some learning materials for their self-study at home. And many of them followed the instruction which we were supposed to finish within the semester. For instance, if you see the first, the leftmost post by one of my students, because this was a 3-minute video posting about their daily life. So as soon as they wake up until they go to bed, what kind of activities they do in a day, because we were apart from each other, and they had a means of recording the video, because fortunately most of them had the smartphone, so they shoot the video and they made their own short script, and they memorized the script, and then they had some kind of a celebrity like short video. So when they posted it in their Facebook, they always used hashtag like hashtag K10UPD. So a teacher myself can easily spot, and I can give them feedback, and I can also correct some grammatical errors there. And then what boosted their confidence and motivation was their own friends' comments and likes and heart reactions, because the students were very shy at first. They were so timid to share, to show they really speak Korean, but eventually when they saw their friends reacted and encouraged, they were quite confident, and I think it made them enjoy the rest of the semester when we didn't really have to do too much work. So if you see the middle post, the Sky Castle poster, this was at the beginning of the semester, because sometimes in relation to exposing students to culture, we don't really have to force them to use target language always, because they have their own language, or they can use multiple languages to express what they are really into, why they are hooked into Korea or Korean language or Korean culture. So I asked them to post whichever dramas or films they really love, and they just make 1 to 2 paragraphs of a description of the Korean drama they really love, and this also made them interact with their own audience in their online world. And then last one is the posting multiple photos when they learned how to use Korean numbers, and how to read phone numbers, and etc. So this all these activities are through online, but in offline world, they still interact with me because some of them make the script, a written script, and then I correct them, and then I ask them whether they are confident in pronunciation or use of the grammars they learned in the textbook. So it was still quite a blended learning when we attempted this one, but as I personally try this kind of activities, and I usually give tasks, such tasks to my students, I think this is some ways we can link online and offline activities for our students. And maybe I will just add one more slide in my part. And I usually ask my students for to make to make some reflection, because in a foreign language learning, I think sometimes teachers and students are too obsessed with target language, and some of them are even very worried about reflection paper or some notes they have to make after each lesson or each week or each semester, whether they have to write their reflection in Korean. If it's Korean 10 or 11, which is very beginner level, it's impossible, and you don't impose using Korean all the time. So this is where importance of reflection comes in, and I usually give them to develop their e-portfolio, because a portfolio is basically just collecting their own work, and if they compile their assignments, it can be a simple way of portfolio to plan and monitor and evaluate their own learning. So I believe portfolio will give them some process-based approach, and they can also receive some detailed and descriptive feedback from a teacher as well. And I also believe portfolio is good for both formative and summative evaluation, as this one will document a progressive stage of a student, and also for summative evaluation, it can demonstrate the mastery of a learning task. Like a few minutes ago, when I talked about my usual practice in assessing my students, it's not just one shot, and it doesn't. My assessment doesn't disappoint students if they fail or if they really were terrible in final exam, because we have to give a room for different attitude or different ways of learning per student. So perhaps in my based on my experience, I want to emphasize trying out a portfolio, disregard of different levels of learners, and also try to make them aware of the importance of reflection in their learning.
All right. Thank you, Mambe, for sharing those activities, no, that the students can use to improve their listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. Now we go to assessment strategies. I would like to ask Sir Chris, since it's somehow related to portfolio, what are assessment tools and strategies would you recommend in evaluating the students' performance and monitor their progress in learning the language? This question is from Maybelline Mendoza.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Be already mentioned the e-portfolio, and I was actually also doing this in my classes in UP, so for a couple of years now. And but what I use is what they call a learning record. So this is an actual thing. It's not just a name. No, there's an actual website for this, learningrecord.org, and you can download the template for learning record there, and it's a Word file, so you can, like, it's easily transferable. And what it does is it has two types of assessment. One is peer assessment and a peer evaluation, and then of course teacher's evaluation of the learner. So how does the student or how does the peer evaluate the learner? And that's through the portfolio. So the reviewer would take a look at the portfolio, since it's electronic, so you can now just share this file with whoever you want to share it with, the assessor. And then they would take a look at the progress, and then you have to give them like a rubric, basically the parameters of grading something, grading someone, so their mastery of the language or whatever. I had to create my own rubric for this, and it's basically just increasing levels of mastery. So your lowest level is the base level. They can do something simple. They can, like, if it's like reading, then they can read individual characters. And then the next level of the next threshold, as they're called, threshold thing. The next threshold would be they can read word level without any problem. The next level would be they can read sentences without any problem. And then your highest for a beginner would be like they can read paragraphs without any problem, something like that. And then you could like ask their students to assess the assigned person to them, and like they can give comments. And from my experience, they're really, really good at this. If you give them parameters on how to assess another person, they will assess that person based on those parameters, and they won't be feeling a bit pitiful. They won't feel pity, like, oh, bigyan ko na to ng 1 to 5, or I'll give this classmate a 1 for the effort. But no, because they have the parameters, they will say, at your current level during the midterm, you are 2.75, or you are a 2 right now, because it's impossible to get a 1 by midterm, because you haven't reached that level yet. So you can see your progress, and then you do another round of this at the end of your class, at the end of term, and then you can see your changes as well. And the assessor will also be different. It will be another classmate, not the same assessor as the midterm. And in this case, they also leave comments and what they've learned from seeing another learning record. And that takes off a lot of pressure from the teacher to like review everything. Now, if you have like a large class, you don't have to review like 20 students, 30 students, and it's all just you. You can just go on and read the assessment of your students, and then you can like have an idea of if the assessment is accurate or not. And then you can provide feedback to your students as well. It takes a little learning when you do the learning record style. It was very hard at the start, but they have a lot of information about this, and I really like it. And I also plan, of course, to use it moving forward, even offline and online. Basically, that's how I do it. So rubric, and then I use it with the learning record to record so that the students can also like keep up with their progress. And because it's it's electronic, our Facebook group is pretty much their proof in the pudding. So their submissions to the Facebook group reflect their how well they've been using the language. Just like with Miss Beth's students, you can see on their social media accounts, they're using the language, and then that's easier for them to assess, for their peers to assess as well, and also for the teachers. And they don't have to like cram, compiling the portfolio the night before submission, because you're building up to it each and every day with each submission. That's already part of your portfolio. You don't have to make anything specifically for the portfolio. It's all just part of your class. Okay.
All right, thank you. I'll just go back to Mambe, because a while ago she mentioned something about portfolio. And so what are the assessment tools and strategies that you would recommend in evaluating the student's performance?
In terms of portfolio, or
Well, maybe assessment in general.
From the usual classroom, we are adapting to new ways of teaching and learning. So based on my plans in my Korean classes, because I I also teach the lower and then also higher levels of Korean, particularly this coming semester. So I'm still figuring out, but if I share what I'm doing, how students can really create contents is also important. For instance, in reading and writing classes, I may be the one who will prepare and who will curate all the learning materials. But when students receive the materials, it should be like they should be a chef that they have to cook something from the existing materials. And for the lower levels, I try to design the materials, how I can really engage them to work on a pair and group, because in a traditional classroom setting we really have so much skit and then group works, and then Filipino students really enjoy those activities. So perhaps in online platforms, we can try to give them some guidelines how two students or a group of students meet, and they can eventually produce a certain outcome together, even if they don't meet face to face, but they really have to achieve a common goal by working in a pair or a group. So aside from summative assessment, which we also have to follow, right? But we give them some more alternative ways to showcase their skills and their abilities in different macro skills. So some students can really students will not be neglected in doing different activities and different requirements in the class.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing those. But now, still related to assessment strategies, what are the good ways to give and receive feedback? Feedback, for example, via email, messaging apps, maybe online face-to-face meetings. Ma'am Flory, maybe you want
Ah,
to say something about this one?
oh, okay. Yeah, giving feedback. This is very important. And for my class, I also use not portfolio. I call them muni muni no furikairi or reflection. We have muni muni. So my muni muni is a very easy. Like for example, I just ask what did we do on this day. There's a date, and then do you have any questions? And I asked them, what did you feel about the lesson? So very easy, just asking about their feelings and asking if they have questions. And then I try to collect their questions. If I cannot give them, I try to give each one of them feedback regarding their answers. But if, for example, if I become very busy, I don't have any time to reply to them one by one. I collect all their questions and their comments, and summarize the common ones and the mostly asked questions, and then I present it to class the next day or the next week, without mentioning the name of the students, unless they tell. I ask them personally, and then I tell them, can I use your name, so we can discuss this question. Yes, I think that this is one way of giving feedback. If you are busy, if your class is big, so you can collect common questions, and then give it to them, so everyone can also benefit from the answer. And yes, I think what you call this, recording your feedback and then sending them to your students, is also one way. Yes. So
Okay,
yeah.
so we have those options at least. Okay, but is it possible to give individualized feedback, especially in the context, for example, of large classes? I think high school foreign language teachers. Okay, they have 35 to 50 students in their class. So is it possible to give individual, especially if you want to focus your assessment or evaluation on the speaking or pronunciation?
You have to push yourself you need to make time for that. Yeah, just like I said, we cannot always personally, I'm guilty of not being able to give personal feedback, to each of my student every week, because I have a weekly muni muni. And not all students submit on time. So since it's a reflection, you also have to give students time to answer. You cannot force them to give their answer immediately. So if I have time, I reply to them individually. If I don't have time, like I said, I collect and then I reply to the class. I give my respect to the class. Or if you want, I heard about this strategy. You divide the class into groups, and like for this week, you reply to this group first, and then next week you read this group first, and that one. So maybe create a system. I think that's
Okay, maybe Mamiya can also share with us the good ways to give and receive feedback. And again, the same question, is it possible to give individualized feedback to students in large classes?
Of course, every teacher is trying to give individual feedback and timely comment each week or after the lesson, and I think that's what all of us are trying to do. And that's why in my I'm planning like uh, in in the classes, we teachers will wait for the students during the class time, because even if it's online or remote learning setting, it should really follow the schedule and the fixed time, so that the learning will not be delayed, and then they will just look for the teacher any time of the day, because it's it might also affect teachers if they are online 24/7 to answer the, like, especially when you use Facebook, you're on the messenger and you have to answer any time of the day. Of course, we try, and I personally try to answer any time of the day, but I think we have to make a very clear house rules for our class, so students will be aware what time and what kind of mode they have to look for the teacher, and what are the rules we have to follow, just like you don't be late to the class, and like those things in physical classroom. So making incorporating clear house rules in your syllabus will also help to guide both teachers and students.
I agree.
Thank you very much. I know it will be very challenging. And of course, it's not possible to be, available online 24/7. Okay. All right. So let's proceed now to the last few questions that we have here. Will online foreign language teaching and learning be as effective as in-person, residential, face-to-face classes, given the situation that we are in right now? So what do you think? Maybe based on your experience. I mean, maybe before you taught or you've had experience teaching a foreign language online. So do you think it's really I mean, it will be effective as in person, residential, or face-to-face classes? Sir Chris?
Hi. Yes. Yes, that's my answer also. Yes. So it can be as effective as in-person, face-to-face classes, but there's a caveat, of course. The scale is smaller, right? So unlike in a classroom where you can have people sit in, they just come by, or like you can like have 20, 30 people, and then you can do this like 3 hours straight. In an online setting, it's not going to be as many people and for as long as you would want, right? So it can't be, because it's not healthy to be staring at the screen for more than 1 hour at a time, or sitting an hour at a time also is a bit dangerous already. So the scale is different, but your content and how effectively you can transmit this content to your students, I think that's just the same. For my experience as well, I really didn't change anything from when I was teaching in person and teaching online, because I was already designing my classes before as more of asynchronous heavy. Now, so I rely more on the synchronous side of it, and then the synchronous portion wherein we're in person and face to face with my students, that's really more of like application and review. Now, so it's not a lecture. Well, we do have lectures, but it's just more of clarifications, and more of like activities, realizations. We're talking about what we got to know. No, that's the discussion part of it, even in a language class. It's very important because all of this exposure that we have, this is kind of like it's useless if we don't analyze what we've taken in, right? So this is the time when we can analyze, when we have our teacher with us and our peers with us, our fellow classmates, and as long as we have that discussion. And even sometimes I even have like students who mentioned, because I record my classes even before the quarantine, I would record my classes on my laptop and then upload it to the Facebook group. Some of my students really appreciated this because sometimes they're absent, especially those classes where we only have one class or one meeting per week. So if they miss 1 week, then that's a lot of information missed. So they appreciate that kind of asynchronicity to the quality of the class. And yeah, I do believe that it's going to be as effective, but smaller scale.
Thank you very much. What about your insights, Ma'am Bay?
I think yes, because like we said yes in the first question, and I think what we have to just remember is more inclusivity in the online class, because we have to consider so many obstacles, so many different cases where students and teachers are situated in. So it will be challenging, but we are trying, and I think it's like Chris mentioned, we have been doing in a physical classroom. So let's transform it in a different mode, and the individualized learning will still take place. And I just remembered when I audio recorded my PowerPoint a few months ago for classes. At first, it was quite awkward, right? You talk to your laptop without looking at any others. But I also learned from other teachers that when you record your PowerPoint or your materials, you have to think you are talking to one student, not really the whole classroom, because the student will watch you by himself or herself. So it will make them assure that learning is really happening. And also when I recorded some PowerPoints, I just tried to give them some feeling of similar pace in the classroom. Like I explained, and then we learned some dialogues, and then I told them in Korean and in English that, okay, now you pause the video and try to answer these questions in the next slide. And then if you don't recall what we have discussed, go back to this minute in the video and try to answer the questions, and then restart the video. So maybe each teacher should develop different tactics and to make this learning more workable. That's it.
Thank you. And before we end, maybe we have tips or motivations for remote learning in general. We start with Ma'am Flory.
Okay, remote tips, learning in general. First, I'd like to say that what Mambe and Sir Chris said regarding the question earlier, I agree to them. And then I like the word recording. Yes, yeah, for my classes, we were required to record all the classes, just in case some students internet suddenly, they call it ochiru, and then they got kicked out. So it's also happens here in Japan, and some students cannot enter. So if possible, if it's okay with your university, if it's okay with the students, yeah, record the class for your students. And as I've said earlier, my muni muni, it's a reflection of what we learned in class, and to ask the students about uh, their feelings, and if they have complaints, or if they have what do you call, other questions that they did not understand about the class. This is also good for review, at the same time, um, yeah, to monitor each day. No, they know what happened during this day and then the next day. So you don't need extra day for review, because they already know, they already have a record of their class, and it's easy to ask their friends, if their friends are also recording what's happening for each class. It's also easy to ask their friends, if they could, for example, they were not able to attend one class, they can ask their friends, and then they can get the answer. And teaching, yes, a lot of preparation and a lot of practice for the teachers, and of course a lot of mindfulness. We think about ourselves, we think about our students, their situation. So I heard that there are a lot of students who find it hard to study alone. They feel lonely. They feel lonely, and at home, they don't have that their own room to study. There are a lot of distractions. So we try to consider that to our planning. Of course, physical and mental health of both teachers and students. If you're not healthy, you cannot you cannot plan well for a class. You'll not be able to have an engaging class. At the same time, if your students are not physically or mentally healthy, that would also be very, yeah, this will, what do you call this, make online learning, whether it's asynchronous or synchronous, very difficult. Yes, just like what Sir Chris said, it's maybe you can lessen the scale, make it a little bit smaller. We cannot push our students and ourselves this time. No, maybe just a little bit of patience. Maximize each class, and yeah, don't forget about fun. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't forget about the fun.
Yeah.
Sir Chris.
Okay. Well, anything else? I mean, um, yeah, exactly. What make it fun, not only for the students but for yourself, primarily for the teacher. If the teacher is enjoying, there's also a huge possibility that the students will be enjoying as well, as long as the teacher isn't sadistic. No? But you just have to again incorporate these things into your study. Even as students, even as teachers, and students learn from teachers, not just what they're teaching, but how they are teaching. So if a teacher will always incorporate their fandoms or their interests into the material, then the students later on, as they become more independent learners, will remember how they were taught and try to do the same thing. And I think that would be a success for any teacher. And with the regards to like distractions, of course, a lot of people don't have like a personal computer that's just for them. They have a personal computer for their family. And so they have their computers placed in the living room or near the kitchen. So it's very noisy for them sometimes. And it's very distracting. And so you can't really like put in the bulk of the information that's important to the class in these face-to-face things. No, you can't put 90% there and then 10% offline stuff. You have to think more offline stuff, and then the face-to-face is really the event, no? Like the main event. It's like a TV show for your class, so that they look forward to going to class. And or I guess for the younger generation, they might be able to understand this when I say like Twitch streamers. No, so streamers, they view the streamers. They can watch for like 3 to 4 hours at a time, and it's similar to that idea that we make our classes, make our online classes, synchronous classes, be an event. No? So that could be anything, not just like a PowerPoint, not just like a face discussion, but you can do many things here. I even have like a guitar. I used my guitar in class once. So we were singing a song in Japanese and I played the guitar. So that made it really fun. And I really like it, this online thing, because another thing is for teachers, this is the perfect opportunity for us to foster more agency. This is also what Ms. Be mentioned earlier. No? We have to foster agency amongst our students. They take their own education into their hands and not just wait for the teacher to give them instructions all the time. Of course, we will give them instructions, but it's really fun as a teacher. No? From my personal experiences, when students ask me, is this a good site? Is this a good thing? Can you please check this sentence that I wrote in my free time? Those are really very rewarding moments. And so to make them more, to increase their agency, because that means that they claim it. No? They claim their class. This is their class, not just a class that they are taking. This is their community. So you give them the responsibilities in that community, like a mod in a forum or a chat. And for the teachers, you have to go with the flow sometimes in online, maybe even more so online. There are a lot of times when stuff can go wrong, like your PowerPoint won't share, your internet becomes super choppy, or somebody's internet becomes really choppy. A family member walks by behind you or something, a dog barking. So try to incorporate those things as well, no, in your lessons, and it may make the event more memorable. And when you're designing or running a class, teachers are very hesitant sometimes to do some things that they're not familiar with. But as we mentioned, trial and error. Think about what Voltaire said. No? Do not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So this means that if something, don't try to aim for perfect just yet. Right? And that means that you will stop trying to do anything at all. It's better to do something, which is like, online classes in a small scale, than say that online classes are useless because we can't teach everyone. That's the perfect, that's the ideal. But the good thing is that we are able to deliver our classes in this way. Okay, that's pretty much.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for that insight. So do not try to aim for perfect just yet.
Yes.
And we need to create a community to increase the agency of our students until they become independent learners. Mambe, last words or tips?
I have nothing to add to Chris and Flory. I totally agree with two of them. I just think we can give more constructive feedback to our students because they might be frustrated. They don't really show or they don't really know if they're doing well or they're going nowhere. So I think teachers need to show extra genuine care and give some more extra constructive feedback so they are encouraged and they will move on rather than being isolated in their online classes. So, yeah, I think we will try our best to be prepared for the coming month.
Can I add one one time?
Sure, Ma'am Flor.
Yeah, if the university or if you own a school, if you can afford it, maybe you can open one day online tambayan. I think this worked for me. My Fridays I had one day online tambayan where students can come and just ask questions where which they were not able to ask in the main classroom. So at the same time, you can also check their physical or mental health. At the same time, this is good for you if you're not available to give them individualized feedback. And if your weekend, you reserve that weekend for me time, the students know where to come and talk to you personally. You know, thank you very much.
All right, so we will end our RTD, our roundtable discussion here. Mapoy, are you there? Okay. Anyway, so we'd like to thank our speakers, Dr. Kyungmin Bay, Ma'am Florinda Palma Hill, and Mr. Christopher Dofitas for sharing your time, your experiences with us this afternoon. I learned a lot, no, as a new foreign language teacher. No? I think parang marami rin ako napulot kasi doon sa mga insights na shinare ninyo sa amin this afternoon. And I hope our viewers are able to learn or were able to address the questions, no, of our
Yes,
viewers
Isko.
this afternoon. Yes, Mampoy, you want to add something before we end the discussion? All right. Okay. So, so thank you very much once again. But before we end our event this afternoon, we would like to remind those who wish to receive certificate of participation, please don't forget to submit a feedback form after the RTD. And please refer to the comment section for the feedback form. And for non-UP students who wish to enroll in Asian languages like Bahasa Indonesia, Malaysia, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Thai. The registration starts next week, August 30. And for more information, please visit the Extramural Classes Facebook page. There you will meet Beshi. Okay? And then next week, recap of our celebration of 98 years of the UP Department of Linguistics with the online forum, language issues amidst a global health crisis, insights and experiences on the ground, happening on Saturday, August 29, 2020, from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. All right, so we're ending the Asian Languages Forum here. Thank you very much once again for your participation and your support. So again, good afternoon. Take care and keep safe.
Okay, thank you. Keep safe, everyone.
Okay.
Okay. Go on.